In my temporary hiatus from YouTube, I guess that's what we'll call it, there were certainly still some things that did happen in the sports world that I didn't get a chance to come on here and talk about. And one of them actually just went down relatively recently. That was the big blockbuster deal involving the New York Jets sending Jamal Adams to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a big package. First round picks in 2021 and 2022. A freaking third round pick in 2021, Bradley McDougald. I think the Jets, if I remember correctly, also sent over a fourth round pick, whatever the case might be. This is a big package for a big name star defensive player. And, certainly wasn't a surprise necessarily in the respects of Jamal Adams getting traded. Maybe it was a surprise on the team that pulled the trigger and ultimately the package that was given up in order to get him to come to Seattle. Maybe. I don't know. But now we will do what we do and pass initial judgment on it and be looking back at this deal for the next few years to see if one or both sides got the better of it or if they both kind of rolled craps on this. And I think I look at it from this perspective. 2 years ago, my Bears made the trade before the season started to go get Khalil Mack. It's appropriate that I'm wearing the Khalil Mack shirt now. And obviously at the time I was very excited about it because I was a huge Khalil Mack guy, him coming out of Buffalo in that 2014 draft class. Never would have dreamed that the Bears would have actually been able to pull a trigger for that guy. And admittedly, I got a little caught up in the excitement of getting an impact player like a Khalil Mack, all the while knowing in the back of my mind that that's all well and good, but if you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter. And the Bears didn't have a quarterback then. I knew that. Y'all knew that. Some of you still are coming to grips with that reality, but they still don't have a quarterback. And as a result, you can look at the picks that they gave up, like, we'll see how that works out for the Raiders, but at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you got a playoff appearance out of it in 2018, but what does that really matter? You're not in it for playoff appearances. You're in it to win trophies. And last year, they didn't make the playoffs. Like, giving up all this draft pick ammo and currency to go get a guy in Khalil Mack to give you an impact presence at edge rusher is great, but if you don't have the QB, it don't matter. And that's an important piece of context there. Because at least for the Seattle Seahawks, they have that guy. They have one of those dudes in the National Football League at the quarterback position. Russell Wilson is legit. Russell Wilson is elite. Russell Wilson is a future Hall of Famer. Period. Don't even know that would be disputed at this point. So when the Seahawks go out here and make a deal like this, it's a little easier to justify it because they already clearly have the quarterback in place. It also makes a world of sense when you think about it that Seattle is trying to extend a window of opportunity to win a championship that many people, myself included, thought had potentially already closed, but they continued to kind of creeped open a little bit. And one of the things they really needed was an impact player on the defensive side of the ball. Well, Jamal Adams is certainly that. So it's coming out of LSU in that 2017 draft, being picked 6th overall by the Jets. He's been a stud. He is a difference maker. Couldn't necessarily fully help but control the gangrene crap storm that he was in with the Jets. But he's a stud. He's a legit difference maker. So you talk about now bringing in a quarterback of your defense, pair him in that defense along with Bobby Wagner. You're also talking about a team with Pete Carroll, a defensive system where safeties in the past like Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, had great careers there. It is a system that is designed for the safeties to be stars and be difference makers. So if you're going to go out and get a guy, it makes sense to go out and get a guy like that. And admittedly, I'm a little bit bigger on the safety position than I think other folks are. I totally get and understand why everybody's so fascinated by the edge rusher, the edge rusher, the edge rusher. But in some cases, you can make the argument that you certainly would rather have an Aaron Donald over any edge rusher in the National Football League, right? Sometimes that interior pass rush matters more. Furthermore, no matter how great your pass rush is, you're not going to get there every single time. At some point in time, you need defensive backs that can cover. You need defensive backs that can do different things. Well, Jamal Adams can fill the box. Jamal Adams can play in man. He can play in zone. He's got ball skills. He can tackle. Ferocious hitter. Playmaker. Just like he can do everything at the position. So it would seem like coming into a Pete Carroll coach defense that the guy potentially is looking at having his best football ahead of him. So it makes sense there. And then it also makes sense for the Seahawks from this standpoint. First round picks for them don't mean as much nearly as it does to other teams. A, because a lot of times they try to dump out of the first round. And B, even when they do manage to stay in the back end of the first round, they usually roll craps on it anyways. See Rashad Penny. See LJ Collier. See Jermaine Ifedi. Do I need to continue? So when you say, hey, I got the chance to get Jamal Adams, I've already got my quarterback. Sure, it'll cost me 2 future first-round picks, but I don't even know what the 2020 college season is going to look like. So imagine how much that 2021 draft could potentially be a crapshoot. I've got a chance at a situation right here, right now, where I think I could bring in a guy to be a difference maker. Why the hell wouldn't I? Especially knowing my history, if I'm John Schneider with first-round picks, has been doo-doo the last several years. You know? Now, certainly, there are concerns for me with this. Is it would say, number one, you bring in Jamal Adams. Yes, he's still under his rookie deal, but he's not going to want to be under that rookie deal that much longer. So how is that going to work out when you eventually are now going to have to put yourself in a position where you have to pay him long-term because you have already made the deal to get him? He has the leverage you do not. And we don't know what that salary cap is going to look like potentially in 2021 when you talk about the loss of revenues due to COVID. Like, what's that going to look like? There could certainly be some tough future financial choices here for the Seahawks. There could be some tough decisions to come. And you could also say for this deal, do you really want to give up that big of a package if you're not one player away? And let me be clear, the Seahawks are not one player away. Jamal Adams is great. Jamal Adams is a stud. Jamal Adams alone in and of himself does not make the Seahawks automatically a Super Bowl contender. So those are things I look at and I'm kind of concerned about it. But then you get the people that are automatically going to praise the Jets, and I don't know why. Now, and sure, it's easy when you talk about sports, especially the NFL, to always covet the draft picks, the draft pick capital, draft pick currency, setting yourself up for the future. It's always nice to think about if you're not winning championships right here or right now, blowing it up and building for the future. But how many times do you have to rebuild? Like, seriously. It's not every day you hit on first-round picks, especially if you're the New York Jets. Even with all the guys that they've wasted first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball. You've got a couple of those guys right, sure, but in general, you know what I mean. D. Milner, rest my case. But you look at this, and you say, okay, this guy's come in and done everything you've asked for the past 3 years. You took him 6th overall. He's obviously that type of dude. He's a locker room leader. He's an on-field general. He's a playmaker. He's a Pro Bowler. He's an all-pro caliber guy. Potentially could be a future Hall of Famer. And you look at him, and then you look at bug-eyed Adam Gase, the failure from Miami, who comes in and fails in his first year in New York. And you decide basically that you're going to take the failed coach's side over the actual legit superstar player side. How the hell does this make any damn sense? Now you could say, sure, how much money do you want to invest in a safety like Jamal Adams when he doesn't make Sam Darnold better, he doesn't make the offense any better? Maybe, fair point. You could say for the Seahawks, hey, you know what, Jamal Adams is great for the defense, but how does that help the offense? Maybe in some ways it could, but in some ways it is certainly a valid point. If you're going to be spending big money on guys, you know, certainly there's a prevalent logic there. If you're talking about on the defensive side of the ball, you want to make it on pass rushers. But maybe where you really want to invest the money is on the offensive side of the ball. And you can get by with a mediocre to average defense if you've got an offense that can keep coming for 60 minutes. But you look at this situation for the Jets, and you're saying, wow, they get 2 future first-round picks. They got a third-round pick out of it, out of one guy. Yeah, but this is also a guy that they took 6 overall just 3 years ago. They actually panned out for him. So now they're running the risk of sitting there trading a sure thing for a couple of future first-rounders that could both potentially be in the 20s. That's not good. That does not work out. That does not make sense. Does not make it good. Quantity does not wholly reign supreme over quality. Let me run that back. Quantity does not always reign supreme over quality. It doesn't matter if the New York Jets have 1, 3, or 20 first-round picks. If it's still the same organization, run by the same type of mindset, the same type of people, with the same types of decision makers, even if the names and faces have changed, everything else stays constant, then what the hell is it freaking gonna matter? Right? So you avoid having to pay Jamal Adams a big-time contract in deference to your crappy head coach that you'll probably fire either after 2020 or 2021. And all the while, you get Bradley McDougald to replace him. Yeah, the kid can play a little. He's not Jamal Adams, but he's solid. But there's also something to, like, if you continue to trade away the rare great player that you get, you will always be in that constant perpetual cycle of rebuilding. At some point in time, you want to identify 3 to 4 real star to superstar level players, and you build around them. That's how champions are made. Right? Right? Like, you look at the frickin' Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, we already know, stud. Travis Kelce, stud. The Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, stud. They've invested in their offensive line, and that offensive line is pretty solid. But you got 3 studs on offense, like legit studs, legit difference makers. And one of them, most notably, key at the quarterback position. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you talk about they had Chris Jones, and they had Frank Clark, a couple other difference makers on the defensive side of the ball. You see what I mean? Like 3 to 5 real difference makers. You look at the 49ers. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they got there. Have a difference maker like George Kittle. Difference makers like Richard Sherman and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And they had DeForest Buckner. Like, you know, again, 3 to 5, like, real deal, big-time players. They just didn't happen to have one at the quarterback position in Jimmy G. Imagine that. But they still got to the Super Bowl. Like, had a massive turnaround in 1 year. So the New York Jets take a look at a formula like that and say, hey, either we build up the entire rest of the team around the so-so quarterback, or if we've actually got the legit stud quarterback, we really will build up around the legit stud quarterback and emphasize his strengths. Pick and choose a couple of key guys here maybe on defense to make a difference. The Jets say, yeah, screw that. In a year where you don't know what the hell is going to happen in that division because now the Patriots don't have Brady. You got a bunch of guys sitting out. Like, the division is literally there for the taking for somebody to jump up and grab it by the balls. And the Jets are taking one of their few true proven commodities, one of the building blocks of a potential championship team, and trading it away for freaking future cap space, a couple of first-round picks. Like, imagine thinking that's a great idea. You don't even know what you're going to get in the 2020 college season. Imagine how much of a crapshoot that 2021 draft could potentially be. And then all the while, you're looking at least one or both of those first-round picks from the Seahawks potentially being in the 20s. How much of a great trade-off is that? For a guy that you took 6th? With all the other busts you've drafted in recent years, you actually hit on one. And now you can't wait to get rid of them. Now, maybe at the end of the day, this all works out for the Jets. But come on. We're talking about the Jets. Jets, Jets, Jets. What in Sam's hell chance do you think this actually has of working out for them well? It may not work out for the Seahawks. But for some of the reasons that have already been explained, I certainly like this deal a hell of a lot better from Seattle's standpoint than I do from the Jets. Good Lord.